in our community, asking Arav Avi Nevish is going to give us some insight into interesting things. Rabbi, b'vakasha.
First of all, I'd like to be mashlim with something that I spoke about here. I think it was 2 years ago, Sukkot. I spoke about the whole idea of candles in Yom Kippur, and I touched upon the machlokes between the achronim if a person needs to light a yard side candle on Yom Tov, or for those who have the minhag of lighting or those who have the minhag of lighting Yizkor candles, that's not a minhag, but this machlokes achronim if you're allowed to do on Yom Tov, and lechatchila, most achronim hold that you shouldn't do lechatchila. And with the evidence, there's different ways of doing it. If you should light it by your table, Yom Tov nowadays is a little hard because we have electric lights anyway, so you're not the whole problem of Ner Shabbat Tola and Yom Tov that you shouldn't light Ner Shabbat Tola. So the person can say to the b'diavad, you can light in the shul, ask the goy, b'chulu. I just want to point out something that I found out later is that there's the Nesivim B'Ster Shlichus Chele Gimel by Daraskin. He brings a whole deal in regards to what's the halacha if a person has a yard site on Motzei Shabbos, or a person who's on the year of Avelus. Motzei Shabbos, when does he have to light the candles? Does he light the candles? Is it before Baruch, is it after Baruch, before he continues the bracha? So he brings the whole arichos advarim, and then in the end he mentions something that was brought down in discussions many years ago. Labor Guru Shalom writes that the yard site of Rebbe Tzin the Frierdiker Rebbe's youngest daughter, Hashem Yikun Dama, is on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, and the Rebbe would ask the Rebbe Guru to light on the second night of Rosh Hashanah to light 5 candles by the Amud, by the Stender, and also to light another candle by his room. And also he mentions that we see that even on Yom Tov you can light. Apparently that's what we hear. Ma'aser Rav, and also he brings over there that the Rebbe told him to save Atidiyenu, etc. And that also every year the Rebbe would, when the Rebbe would come to shul, he would check on the Stender to see if the candles were lit. So we see from here, Ma'aser Rav, that there is much room to allow a person to light a yard set candle or a Yizkor candle for those who want to, even on Yom Tov itself, without any restrictions. That's what it's mashma from this story. Okay. The Gemara says, this is just to be mashma what we spoke about 2 years ago. The Gemara in Sukkot, Lamed Zayin, Lamed Bey says that by the lulav and esrog, the adasim, a person cannot smell on sukkahs, but the esrog you're allowed to smell during sukkahs. The Gemara asks why. What's the difference between adasim and esrog? Both of them have smell. The Gemara answers because by adas, the main purpose of adas is to give a smell. So when you prepare that for the mitzvah, so hukta mitzvah, so you the main objective, the main purpose of adas, you can't smell on sukkahs. Mashenkin esrog is mostly used to eat. It's a fruit. So in achinami that on sukkahs you can't eat the esrog. You're also going to lose the esrog, but there's a lacha that you can't eat the intan mukta. But to smell the esrog, that's not the main purpose of the esrog. You're allowed to smell the esrog. That's what's brought down in the Gemara. We know that adasim people used to smell. That brings in it's brought down in Shulchan Aruch. That also brings in the Reish Tzadik Tes, B'negea Reish Tzadik Zayin, B'negea B'samim for Abdallah. That there's an inyan of the Kabbalah, but also B'chal regarding the Klal. That we say that any mitzvah you should try to do as many mitzvahs as possible to use the adasim that you have by the lulav to use throughout the year for the samim for Abdallah. There's a whole discussion if adasim itself is enough, or if you need to add another besamim, because sometimes adasim dry out. Poskim say that especially nowadays, adasim after a few days or a few weeks they don't have smell anymore. But there's an inyan of using an adasim for the smell for the besamim of Abdallah. That's a derech that we find by the matzahs, the Erev Tatzeres and Erev Tavshilin to use also for the Chamishna, the 2 mitzvahs. We also find by the Ishainis and also the Rav Esbalulav that there brings regarding baking the matzahs and also burning the chametz. So this cloud that we try to use for many mitzvahs. So we see that the adasim, the main purpose of the adas is to give smell. Like we said, is to eat. Therefore, in esrog you're allowed to smell on Sukkah's Meikar Adin. And also it's brought down into I saw in Minhag Chabad, and also there's a letter in the Sukkahs. The Rebbe gave this instruction to many people after Sukkahs to use the Adasim for Besamim, and also to use the esrog for jelly, as we know the custom, etc. So this is what it's from this Gemara, because Muktzem Machmas Mitzvah. Now just a Maimer Musgar of what there are a few chilukim that we find between regular types of Muktzah on Shabbos or Yom Tov, which is more strict, or Muktzeh Machmas Mitzvah. That Muktzeh Machmas Mitzvah is specifically regarding Sukkah and Dalad, meaning there are many of Rishonim that hold that it's Minat Torah. The Gemara in Sukkah at the beginning learns that you can't use the Atzi Sukkah from the Pasuk. It says Shivas Yamim that you can't. That's how we learn that you can't. The whole machlek is B'Shamay B'Sila regarding Sukkah Yeshana. So many Rishonim hold that it's Minat Torah. That's one chiluk that we find between Muktzeh Machmas Mitzvah and the other types of Muktzeh. Another chiluk that we find is that Muktzeh Machmas Mitzvah you're allowed to touch it and move around the same way that we hold the esrog and we move around. The only thing that you can't do is the specific purpose. You can't smell the adasim and you can't eat the esrog. But I'm allowed to move around. Mashenkin and the other types of muktzahs, as we know. Another chiluk that we find, many other chilukim, but another one is that Muktzeh Machmas Mitzvah is also asur b'chol hamoed. Mashenkin the other types of Muktzeh, which is only Shabbos or Yom Tov, which have different dinim. Comes the Torah in Simon Tafresh Gimel, a special Simon for this type of halacha, and he says he brings this Gemara that the esrog is mutar. You're allowed to smell on sukkahs, but the adasim you can't. And then he brings there's a machlokes if you have to make a bracha when you smell the esrog or not. There's a machlokes on Shonim. There's Rabbeinu Simcha, which is the Mechaber of the Machzor Vitri, and he says that you should not make a bracha when you smell the esrog on sukkahs. He says why they call it lav l'reach avidi, because it's not oimed l'reach. That's what he says. And then the other hand, the Raviyah says that you have to make a bracha. So this is what the two brings us. The machlokes when you want to smell the esrog on sukkahs, if you should make a bracha or not. The bracha should be anoisen or she'ashenasam reach lapiris. And then he says that ba'adasim, everybody, like the Gemara, you can't smell. That's what the two brings. So the Achreinim ask, what's the reason to say that you shouldn't make a bracha? And they say that it's dafke by sukkahs, not throughout the whole year. Throughout the whole year, even Rabbeinu Simcha holds that you should make a bracha. The only problem is that by sukkahs, because you're using that esrog for the mitzvah, so it's not emed l'hareach. You're going to use that esrog, you bought it out of sukkahs, and you're going to use it to perform the mitzvah. Ain't not nami that according to the Gemara is not hooked on the mitzvah, so it's dafke l'achila, not for l'hareach. But nevertheless, because you're using that esrog dafke to perform the mitzvah, you can't take it now and say I want to make a bracha and smell it. You're allowed to smell it, but you shouldn't make a bracha. That's what he holds. So the Achreinim discuss what's exactly the svara. I'm not going to get into that. And Lamaisa, the Mechaber brings Shulchan Aruch, this machlokes that the two brings, and then he says that the Adas mitzvah also l'reach boy, like you all know, but less mitzvah mutar l'reach boy min adin, elos lefish nechel kuyim evorchim alavim lo yesh limnoyam l'reach boy. The Mechaber paskins that because of this machlokes, if you need to make a bracha or not, you should avoid making the bracha. Now what's the svara? The svara is that if the halacha is like the opinion that holds that you should make a bracha, so by not making a bracha, but if you don't make a bracha, you're going to be nehana from something without making a bracha. That's an issue. You can't be nehana, you can't eat something without making a bracha. So according to the opinion, they have to make a bracha. If I smell now without a bracha, I'm being over being nehana something without making a bracha. Now, if I decide to make a bracha, according to the opinion that you should not make a bracha, I'm saying a bracha levatala. So that's why the Mechaber says, Paskins, that the Maisa you should avoid smelling an esrog, not mitzad the muktzah, but mitzad this machlokes if you need to make a bracha or not. So that's the law. And that's the Negela Mitzvah many times. As we know, on Sukkot, a lot of people use that famous medrash when they're going on Mitzvah. It's either they're going to give I think it's the same medrash. Either they're going to tell the guy that the lulav is the shidra and the esrog is the heart and the dasim is the eyes and the arav is the mouth, and he explains to the guy the whole thing. Or the most famous one that each one represents a type of yid, the guy who has smell and taste, Torah, mitzvahs, the chulu. So especially when you teach the guy, you're getting, oh, you want to smell? So I see people smelling actually the dasim. The dasim is definitely also, but also the esrog. Many people have the custom when they're benching the lulav going on mitzvah, the guy wants to smell the esrog. And the cloud. If your esrog has a very strong smell, it's also chash. You have to make sure that there's not too many holes, because usually a smell is a sign that it's not so good. So you have to be very careful in Mitzrayim that the halacha is for sure regarding adasim that a person should not smell, and the esrog also the Mechaber Paschal is that you should avoid smelling. Also to know that the Beis Yosef in the Bach in the Torah they bring also that this machlokes is between the Rabbeinu Simcha Ravia is brought down in the Mordechai and the Smak, and it appears that each one holds like a different opinion. So they bring this, and another important note that they bring from the Smak, I think the Bach brings that that those who smell, I believe it's speaking about the esrog, it's the minhag shtus. So we see from here that a person should, especially when going to Mitzrayim, should be careful not to tell the person to smell, definitely, but try to tell them not to smell the adasim or the esrog, even if you're teaching them about the whole medrash of the things. Now, what about regarding Shabbos of Chol Hamoed Sukkos, and also what about when you're not performing the mitzvah? So the machlokes is between the Magen Avraham and the Taz. The Magen Avraham here in Tafresh Nom Gimel brings these 2 points. He says that he's makel sai for Shabbos Chol Hamoed Sukkos because now it's not, you're not going to be the kind of mitzvah. So the esrog is not for mitzvah, so I'm allowed to smell it. And then in regards to also when he also adds that even during the regular Chol Hamoed or on Yom Tov Sukkos, if I already performed the mitzvah or I'm going to perform the mitzvah in hours from now, I'm also allowed to pick up my esrog and smell it. Why? Because he says it's not b'shas mitzvah, so there's no, even Rabbeinu Simcha would hold that you could smell and you could make a bracha. There's no problem with that. And then he says that you should that's the halacha according to the Magen Avraham that you could smell the esrog on Shabbos. And you can also smell if you already performed the mitzvah. If it's on night of Chol Hamoed, if it's right now, and I know I'm not performing the mitzvah now, I could also take my esrog and I can smell it according to the Magen Avraham. The Taz, however, holds it's mashma from what he writes here in Tafresh Nun Gimel, especially when he speaks on a different siman in Tafresh Nun Ches. Tafresh Nun Ches, the Shulchan Aruch begins with the halachas of Shabbos, how we know that the lulav bismanenu, the first day of Sukkot is min haTorah, and in Bechutz Lamikdosh is the last 7 days. You don't have to do dalaminim. The Chamim were talking that you should do dalaminim even the 7 days of Sukkot, even outside of the Mikdosh. And he says that when it falls on Shabbos nowadays, even by the Mikdosh, even in Eretz Yisrael, they don't pick up the dalaminim on Shabbos like Shefer, etc. So. There on Seif Beis, I believe, he speaks about muktzeh, because if we are not using the lulav and esrog on Shabbos, what's the din regarding muktzeh for lulav and esrog? So the Ramah, I think, brings also the lulav b'Shabbos the havi kevin aval esrog mutar b'titul aderoi l'reach. The lulav, the adasim and the rav is you can't touch it because it's muktzeh. There's nothing you can do with it. Ashenki in the esrog, when it comes to Shabbos on Sukkot, you're allowed to smell it, like we were saying before. You can smell it, so it's not right away because we just learned, according to the Taz, that even on Shabbos you're not supposed to smell it. So if you can't smell even on Shabbos, so why is the Ramah saying here that you can hold the esrog? So he answers that that you shouldn't smell even on Shabbos, according to the Taz. But you could there's no problem with smelling it. You can actually take something else. And you can make a bracha. He holds that you can also be allowed to smell on Shabbos. Now, the Ma'aseh say if you want to smell on Shabbos, you could take any other besamim they have at home. You make a bracha on that, and then you can smell the esrog. There's no chashash brachas anymore. So that's why the esrog the Ma'aseh is no muktzeh, even according to the Taz, because the Ramah brings it. So we see from here that even the Taz agrees that the esrog is not muktzeh, but for a different reason. Mashenik in the Magen Avraham there. In Tafresh Nun Ches brings Ein Simon Tafresh Nun Gimel the royal lehariach by the Shabbos. You're allowed to smell it on Shabbos, and then he brings another reason. He said the loyas katze because it's not muktzeh. Also, you can make the same solution of the Taz. That you can make a bracha on something else, and you can smell the esrog on Shabbos. So we see this machlokes between Magen Avraham and Taz. Different Achronim hold different positions. If like the Magen Avraham, if like the Taz, if like the Magen Avraham fully that sai by Shabbos and sai when you're not being mekayim mitzvah Chol Hamoed, or have the maybe Shabbos yes Chol Hamoed during when you're not doing the mitzvah nisht, or the opposite. And there's different opinions. And it's also interesting to know that there's a different lashon in the Mechaber in the this halacha of the sukkahs smelling the esrog is also brought down in Simon Reishtes Zayin and in Dinei Birchas Areach, by Birchas Areach. So the Bechaber brings also at the end, let's see if Meriach be'esek shel mitzvah mevarech olav v'yishemim she'ena mevarech lekach nafesh shalil. So here by design, the Mechaber uses the word v'yishemim she'ena mevarech lekach nochain. It's good not to smell. Mashen before by Chesuk he writes el efficient dechlakud is machlokes. Mevarechim olav yishemim mevarech boy. By Chesuk the Mechaber is more sharp. By Ilches Reach he says that Nochen Shlel Reach, but the Ilches Sukkot he writes Yesh Limnoya Milorech. It sounds a little stronger that you should avoid smelling the esrog during Sukkot. Now, what if a person wants to smell? You're on Mitzvahim, you explain the whole medrash to the guy, and you tell him you can't smell. Like, Rabbi, I want to smell it. What can I do? Like, if a person wants to smell, so the Magen Avraham brings from the Bach, I believe it is. Why? And interestingly enough, the Bach brings the Isa b'medrash ma esrog yesh b'tam v'reach im kein avid l'reach hakamshen. The Bach brings this medrash itself that it's a proof that the esrog is also avid l'reach on sukkahs. The whole medrash is that the adas has a smell and the esrog has a taste and a smell. So we see from here that the esrog has a smell. And if it's not muktzeh, unlike the adasim, so we see that on sukkah itself the esrog is avid l'reach, even though you would think that according to Rabbeinu Simcha, it's not Omer L'Oreach, but he says that because we see from the Midrash itself, that on Sukkot the esrog is Omer L'Oreach, therefore you're allowed to make the bracha if you want to smell it. But the Magen Avraham doesn't agree. So the Magen Avraham disagrees and he says that no, we don't hold like a dvach, even though it's a nice medrash and it could be approved, but Lamaisa we don't play with Safek brachas, we don't play with Safek brachas, we say lahakim. And if a person wants to smell, you should not bench, you should not make the bracha. And I believe that's also the lalach. If a person wants to smell, I think most Achronim bring that you should not make a bracha on the esrog. Also interesting to note that in the Bach itself, I saw some bring that you have to have a kavana also. If a person wants to smell the esrog on sukkahs, you have to have the whole. I think the Bach brings that you have to have the kavana that this esrog represents the blame the Torah and ma'asim tovim, the taste and the smell. You have to have the kavanah. And some bring that even if you want to smell after sukkahs, for those who like us that avoid smelling on sukkahs, you should have the kavanah when smelling an esrog after sukkahs. This kavanah that it represents the Yidden who learn Torah and are mekayim mitzvahs. The question is, what's the shit of the Alter Rebbe? So unfortunately, we don't have the simonim of the Alter Rebbe side by Ilchos Sukkot from Tafresh based on, and also in Ilchos brachas from Rishtas Zayin. We don't have the simonim, but we have Baruch Hashem Birchas Anenim. And the Alter Rebbe brings us halach in Perek Yudalev halach ches. He starts by saying that you can only make a bracha b'samim, whatever it is, on a smell, if it's something that it's made for smell. But if it's something to just take a bad smell or something else, if it's not made for good smell, you can't make a bracha on it. And the Alter Rebbe continues, v'lachein yeshemim shamiriach be'esek shel mitzvah ein mevarich alav kol shiva simei achag. Afal pi shemutar l'reach boy ein oyemed l'reach boy elo litlo shemitzvah. Right? The Simcha holds that the whole purpose of the esrog during Sukkot is to do the mitzvah, so it's not oyemed l'reach, so you can't make the bracha. And Alter Rebbe brings the other opinion who say that you could make a bracha, and then the Lamaisa the Alter Rebbe writes v'lachein toiv li'manoyam l'reach boy kol achag. Therefore, a person should avoid like the Tovlim Noya. It's like the two lashonos of the Mechaber, Lachem and Yesh Noya, more or less, and Kol Achag. So from the Kol Achag, it's mashma that Alter Rebbe holds like the Taz in this halacha that you should not make a bracha on the esrog, even on Shabbos and even when you're not performing the mitzvah. That's what it's mashma with Alter Rebbe. And also I saw brought down in the Sefer Arba'as Minim by Rav Vina, and he also brings on his. And he also brings that it's mashma from the Alter Rebbe here that he holds like the Taz that you should not smell the esrog even on Shabbos and even when you're not using to perform the mitzvah. Now another point, interesting point to discuss is regarding muktzeh. So we said that Shabbos it's not muktzeh because even if you hold like the Taz, you could take another b'samim from your house and you can smell that. You can smell the esrog, so it's not a problem of muktzeh. And the esrog is not muktzeh on Shabbos. Only the lulav, the dasim, and the ravid are. The question is, so we know it's muktzeh. Well, what about muktzeh machmas chisun kis? So the Shmir Shabbos Kiyot and Pesach Teshuvah bring from many Achronim that Lamaisa today it's muktzeh machmas chisun kis because people spend a lot in their regim and they're very careful about it. So it should be muktzeh, even though we said that it's not, you can smell with something else. But Lamaisa it's something that it's muktzeh machmas chisun kis, and you can't touch it on Shabbos. But the Ma'aser we know that the Alter Rebbe holds in Simon Ches that Muktzeh Machmas Chisim Kiz only applies to a Klisha Malach Yisur, but the answer here is a Klisha Malach Heter, so that the Rabbi would be fine with moving around the Esrog and Shabbos, even though there are some places that Muktzeh Machmas Chisim Kiz, but the Rabbi holds that it doesn't apply to a Klisha Malach Yisur. Now, there's an interesting comparison also to Shofar. Many people say during Elul, on Shabbosim of Elul, if you're allowed to move the Shofar. Now, Shofar B'chal is Muktzeh because it's for Shma's Koil, you can't move it, but the question is it only Muktzeh Klisha Malach Yisur that you could move the Gufel L'Tzorech Mekoyim, or is it also Muktzeh Machmas Chisim Kiz? Because many people also are careful about their Shofar. So also many places hold stringently that you should not even move these people expensive shofars, etc. But I believe many Chabad Rabbanim say, especially if you're using the shofar to go on mitzvahim, and we know that we're not so careful about gashmizdike things, even when it comes to mitzvahs. So it's not such a big deal that, especially what kind of shofar you're talking about. If it's one that you're using for mitzvahim and you're not so careful throughout the year in general, so it shouldn't be a problem. It's the same would apply also for the esrog, but like we said, it's not a problem at all, because it's Klisha Malach Heter. Just one little interesting thing that it's brought down in some places that we said that Hadas is also L'Reach according to all, like the Gemara says, because the Muktzeh is for the Reach, and there are some people that say that even if your Hadas is 5 tefach tall, even if it's more than 3 tefachim, you can't just take the bottom 2 and say I'm going to smell that part. It's not hooked on the mitzvah because I'm counting on the top 3 tefachim. They say no. Because once it's one piece, you're making the bracha on the whole thing. It's connected to many halachas that we find that if you have in mind you're gonna be hooked to only one part, like the Hanukkah oils at the last day. If you wanna have in mind that only the first 15 minutes, 1 hour is gonna be for the mitzvah, and the rest is gonna be fine. You can throw it out and whatever.
Ashknazi. The Keenus will continue on Sunday, and on Isuchag, details to follow. Call to Yontev. So, right, everybody, is going to be also a Simchas V'Sasheva 7:30. It's in between Lemire and Westbury. Huh?